Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy. Thanks for tuning in today, and you'd be glad you did if you have a truck similar to mine and maybe you've loaded the bed up with a bunch of stuff recently, or like me, you've hauled a heavy trailer and you've found that the suspension is pretty much bottomed out, which makes the truck very difficult to drive and actually kind of a bit unsafe. First and foremost, make sure you're not exceeding the load capabilities of your vehicle. But what I'm going to do to try to combat this problem is I'm going to install a set of these helper airbags on top of the leaf springs on the truck. And what these will allow me to do is whenever I have a heavy load or something like that, is add air to these bags, raising the truck back up to a ride height that makes it safer and easier to drive. Let's get started by checking out the parts that I have laid onto the bench here. Now this is not a sponsored video. I got this stuff on my own. I thought about air shocks, but I'd be driving with those all the time. I like the shocks that are on it now, plus the truck is lowered and it's a little tricky to find air shocks for a lowered truck. That said, this kit is specifically designed for trucks that have been lowered 2 to 4 inches, I believe, in the rear. My truck has been lowered 4 inches in the rear, so this kit should work just fine for me. The kit is from Airlift. It's called the Slam Air kit. It comes with these 2 airbags. It comes with 2 mounting brackets, both upper and lower. Also some hardware to attach everything, and all of this stuff looks like all the air and everything, well, air hookups and everything you need in order to inflate these airbags. Now, you can install this system to where you have an electronic air pump and you could just push a button in the dash and everything will work out fine. But I'm not going to be using this all that much. So I'm just going to stick with the regular Schrader valves that are in this and just inflate this when I need it. Now, looking through the instructions, really all I need is a basic set of hand tools, some drill bits. I believe one of them is a 3/8, a good drill, and something to remove the wheels with, and also a tape measure, safety glasses. But that's pretty much all I need. From the looks of this, reading through the instructions, it doesn't look like it's going to be all that difficult to install. I hope I don't eat those words later. Now, job one, and you should probably do this before you even consider buying this kit, is to make sure that you've got enough room to install these airbags. The instructions state that you need at least 5 inches between the back of the tire and the frame, and I've got what looks like about 7 inches, so I'm good here. Now, if you have wheels with like a big negative offset or something like that, you need to be mindful of that because you don't want the airbag coming in contact with the wheel while it's moving. So I've removed the wheels and I've supported the rear axle on jack stands. And I've done this because I want to do this installation as close to ride height as possible. They don't want you overextending or underextending the bag because you could damage it. Anyway, I'm going to do things here on the jack stands, but let's get a look at how these things get set up in here. Here's the lower bracket, and I'm going to install mine here up front. You see this little hook here actually goes over the top of the U-bolt, and that will keep this from walking up and down the leaf spring. Now, you can install it on the front like I'm going to here, or maybe if there's a shock mount or something in the way, you've got staggered shocks. You can also mount it in the back. This is a universal kit. It has this cutout to fit over the top of the leaf spring. And then the U-bolt's going to go in here and hold the back side of it down. I'm going to install mine in here, and I'm just trying to get a look at how things play out. Here's the airbag and the upper mount, which you can put the upper mount on like this, or if you need to, you can flip it over like this. It doesn't matter. Based on what I'm seeing here, I think my upper mount can go in just like that. And I mean, that just lives in there like it was made for it. Now, there's a bolt on the back side here I'm going to have to remove, and that's something super important. Before you go drilling these holes, make sure that there's nothing on the other side of the frame like a fuel line or electrical wiring or anything like that that you're drilling into. So make sure that you're not drilling into something important. In my case, I have a fuel line that's back here, or a brake line rather, that's back here that needs to be moved, and also some electrical stuff. So I'll make sure that's out of the way when I do my drilling. You also want to make sure that there's enough clearance up top here for when you attach the air fitting. And it looks like I'm not going to have any trouble up in this area at all. So on my Chevy, there's this bolt coming through the frame that has a retainer that holds a brake line and I believe maybe some electrical wiring on the other side. I'm just going to remove that all together, move that stuff around, and find some other way to attach it with like zip ties or something. Now that I've removed that clip, I'm just going to pull this stuff back out of the way so that when I drill, I don't drill into any of this. Here's a better look at the hardware that comes in the kit, with the exception of like some of this stuff for the airlines, some zip ties and stuff like that. But the airlines and some of the fasteners and washers and spacers. Now it does come with some of these spacers. In some applications there may be like a channel inside the frame and you need to basically shim it up, and that's what these are for. So there are some special shims and things like that that you can use. But what I'm most interested in right now is this, which is sort of a mock-up installation tool, which represents one of these air springs, let's call them. And I'm gonna mount it to this lower mounting bracket, and I don't know if you noticed, but this is slotted, so you can move it around like this. But mount this so that I can get these holes drilled into the frame and get them properly located. And the sticker's good for an extra 10 horsepower. All right, I'll start by mounting this lower bracket with the tool installed. I'm gonna leave it a little bit loose so I can do a little bit of this. Washer. Okay, washer. I don't want to tighten everything down completely until I've got it all together. And I did what I could to make sure everything was centered on the leaf spring. Now to get this upper guy set up. As long as you can fit it with this adjustment, you are good. Parking brake cable is kind of a pain at the moment. Temporarily move it out of the way. There are these upper nuts that are in the kit. Install that now. That way I can put it where I want it. And I'm gonna try to center it up on the frame. Now, let's drill some holes. I'm gonna start with an easily accessible hole. I like these lower holes because I can get into this one really nice. So I'm going to start with a smaller drill bit and work my way up to, well, the next one I'm going to use is the 3/8 drill bit that you're going to need. Oh yeah, we're good. Now jump up to that 3/8 drill bit. I'll take the mounting bracket, install it again, run that bolt in from the back side. Because the bracket is locked into place by that one bolt, well, loosely locked into place, it'll make drilling out those other holes easier and more accurate. With everything drilled, I'm going to remove the bracket, clean up all the metal shavings, clean the surface, and put some paint on the bare metal before final installation. And while that's drying, I'm going to do the other side. This should help keep things from rusting up. It's the same thing on this side, except for there's nothing behind this frame rail to worry about. I would call this the easy side. It's like a whole new world over here without parking brake cables and junk in the way. Well, that wraps up the drilling holes for the passenger side. Now I'm going to remove this bracket just like I did on the other side, but I'm actually going to go back on the other side and do something I should have done, and that is to deburr the holes, and especially on the back side. There might be little bits of metal sticking out. I like to try and remove those, but I'm going to do that, and I've also done a little bit of scoring on the bracket here, so why not throw a little bit of paint on that? Maybe go grab some lunch while that dries, and we'll come back and install the backs. I'm gonna lift the truck up in the air in order to gain better access to all of this and clean all this stuff up. But before I do, I wanna be sure and remove this nut on the top of the tool, because when this extends, it would pretty much wreck this tool and this little plastic nut, because these are only plastic, they can be damaged quite easily. Before I get into all that, I'm just going to tighten these U-bolt bolts. It's important to tighten them evenly so that they're run down evenly, but the final torque on these is going to be 16 foot-pounds. It's probably not a bad idea that when you're done, you also trim off the excess here. I think that's a personal preference. All the burrs have been removed, the paint is now dry, and I'm ready to install these brackets permanently. Instead of running the bolts through this way, I'm gonna run the bolts through this way. And I'll have the nuts on the back side with the large washers. Now, I'm not overly concerned with that bracket not being fastened down. It seems to be holding everything away from the bolts, so it should hopefully keep them from chafing or rubbing up against one another. I might go back in with a zip tie before it's all done and try and secure things, but so far I'm not really displeased with what I'm seeing. Now we'll do the other side. Before I install this airbag, I'm gonna go back into my parking brake cables and try to get them roughly sorted out. So what I'm thinking of, drilling a hole right here and zip tying it. This gets the grease off. It's just a little bit of brake clean. I'm going to jump over to this side while the other side dries. There's a threaded hole in the bottom of the airbag. I've lowered the truck onto jack stands so I can have it sort of part way in. I think I got it. I'm not going to tighten it all the way. Well, it looks pretty good as far as placement goes. I'll let the truck down. Let that seat. Pretty happy with how that just went in like that. The tops of this nut have like little rounded spots on it, and then the bottom it's all flat. So I'm going to put the flat side towards the top of the spring here. Leave the rounded part towards the top. Now this bottom nut or bottom bolt, now that I'm sure everything's lined up, I can tighten that. I have no idea how you're going to get a torque wrench on this, but it's 10 foot-pounds. To me that says like, don't kill it, just snug it. Because it is going into plastic after all. That feels good. And this plastic nut up top goes to 4 foot-pounds. And I think of that, I'll just get my adjustable and just give it a little That seems like plenty. Looks really good. I think that's going to be the hardest part of the install. We just need to do the other side and run some airlines. And we can try it out. Same deal on this side. I lifted it up a little so I could drop the spring in easily. Let's raise it up and see what it looks like at full droop. Doesn't look bad at all. It's not overextended, anything. So I'm happy with how that turned out. It turned out real well. Same over here. Looks good. Let's see if we can put this parking brake to bed. We'll have to see that if that makes contact. If it does, we'll have to come up with something else. But for now, it's gonna live there. I'm gonna put the fitting on top of the airbag now. This is where the air is gonna come in to the top of it. It's got Teflon tape on it, so tighten it. But keep in mind, there's a lot of plastic around here. Yes, I want an airtight seal, but I also don't want to break it. It's about there. I aim it back in that direction. Put that on the other side too. One last thing to do, and that's hook up the air lines. Now, if you're hooking up an air compressor, you've got to run these to that. But I'm just going to run these to the back side of the truck. Anyway, this is the order of the fasteners. So there's a nut, there's a lock washer, there's the body of the vehicle for whatever you're going through, the rubber washers, the regular washers, and the outer nuts. So that's how they want you to install them. Given that they are, well, these ends are already made, I'm going to mount those first and then run them back to the airbags, and then I'll make my cuts and we'll connect them and we'll be done. Now you can mount these valves anywhere you want, really. And like I said, if you're going to an air compressor, you can set all that stuff up. But here's just some suggestions on the inner fender, inside the filler neck, right through the license plates, which, you know, I wouldn't even have to drill any holes if I did that. Also, actually, this is more up to speed with where I think I'm going, is right in here on the inner part of the bumper. So I just found something very interesting in a previous video, in fact, about towing with a trailer. I was having trouble finding what the load rating for this truck was. Well, right here, stamped into the back bumper, is 4,000 pounds trailer max load and a 400-pound tongue weight. Now, I'm assuming that's going to be with these mounts for the ball, but I have a different hitch on here, which I'm going to say is probably going to increase it a bit along with the airbags, but there's a place you might look to find the load rating for your truck. I think mounting those valves somewhere down in this area for each side, because each airbag has its own valve and hose. But this is the pass-through for the spare tire release or crank. So I'm just putting this extension in here since that's buried under the back seat at the moment. But I want to make sure that I'm not interfering with this, and it looks like if I drill in down here, I'll be just fine. All right, if I position the ruler right there at 1 inch in on this, and if I just put this right up here on this corner, put a mark right there, I can repeat that on the other side. Also keep in mind that you're going to have to access wherever you place this with an air hose. So that one will go right there. I just want to make sure that I can get to the back side of this just fine. I was going to be like, wait, before I commit, make sure there's nothing on the other side. So this will be a 5/16 hole. Before final assembly, I'm not going to spray paint these. I'm just going to go in with some touch-up paint and hit the bare metal. I suppose I should check to see if this actually fits perfectly. All right, here's something to note. This is all one piece. So I'm going to do one side at a time and hope I have enough. Got to leave enough of this sticking out. Actually, I should grab a washer, but you got to leave enough of this sticking out so that you can get a air fitting on it. I don't want it sticking out too far, but I think that's good. Just to confirm, here's my air chuck. Oh yeah, that's ideal. I want to try to route it away from anything that could possibly damage it. Gonna leave a little bit of slack right there. Couple of things about cutting this. Do not use side cutters or anything like this. It's very important that the hose maintains its shape. If not, it won't seal correctly. So therefore you want to use, I have a brand new blade here in my utility knife, and I'm going to use that. And I'm just going to lay it up here and cut it at my mark. So this way I have a nice clean end that's not compromised in any way. When I said clean, I meant clean cut. The next thing they want you to do, make a mark, actually put tape on it. It's about 9/16 of an inch away from the end. And I have my caliper set up pretty much to that. It's about 9/16 of an inch from the end there. Then literally all it is you push this in till you get to that mark and you're done. There it is. Installed. Same thing over here. Fun fact, this black paint is actually for the Type R. I think that's set up enough. Now I'll tighten it down. This is a 13 millimeter. I want it secure, but that rubber grommet and everything is going to hold it in there nice. I like where that is a lot. That's secure. Before I put the wheels on, I think I'll tie this up out of the way. Now, when you do these zip ties, don't cinch them down till it's so tight that you pinch the hose. You just want to secure it. And now for the fun part, we get to actually see it work. Well, I hope we actually get to see it work. The instructions say to test it at 60 pounds. So inflate it up to 60 pounds on both sides. One side's gonna go up and then the other. Then we'll spray it with some soapy water, or depending upon where you're from, water. And we will check for leaks. Whoa, that's immediate. And that's 60 pounds right there. That happened quickly. Neat. That's cool. All right, let's spray those down and check for leaks. It's a whole new look, right? I think the main place that I want to check for leaks is at the connection. So this is soapy water, especially the connection that I made. If there are any leaks, you'll see tiny bubbles. No tiny bubbles. It does look really cool in there. Let's check this side. Doesn't look like any leaks. I think we got it. I'm also going to check these valves just for good measure. They look good. I've let the truck sit overnight and I set it at 60 PSI. Now I'm going to check that PSI and see where it sits today. The instructions said that you can expect some air loss when you initially start using it, but that should taper off the longer they get used. All right, right side. It looks like that is going to be right around 45, so it did drop on that side. And the other side is about 55, so it dropped a lot less on the left side. Just want to check something real quick here. See if these Schrader valves are tight. That one's secure, and that one's secure. The instructions state that over a 24-hour period, anything more than 5 PSI, it's considered excessive and it could be a leak. So I really should look into and see if I have any leaks on this side over here, but this side seems to be fine. All right, I've sprayed everything down. It looks like that connection could be a little tighter based on the look of it. To fix this, I'm going to let all the air out. To release the fitting, they say to push the collar up against the fitting and pull back. And actually that worked quite well. All right, they say trim a little bit off of it, a ½ inch or so. There's a point where it bottoms out. I think that's what they're really looking for. All right, I'm gonna fill it up and check it again for leaks. I think we got it. Before, when I sprayed it, the bubbles were coming out almost immediately. I don't see that now. All right, so an important step in this process should be to check for leaks, in particular at these valves. I think it should be noted that everything is routed in such a way to where it's well away from the exhaust or anything that could pinch or bind during the suspension travel of the truck. Everything is up behind the frame rail, tucked in nice, neat and tidy on both sides. And we're back. For you, it's only been a couple of seconds, but I have left it sit overnight for a second time, and I'm going to check the pressures now that I've fixed that leak. Start with the right side. And it looks like we are down again, right down to about 45. Other side is right up around 50. So we are lower than what they say is recommended, and it still continues to be this side. Day 3, and we're back. Yeah, I couldn't let that passenger side go. Within 5 pounds is acceptable, but 15 is a bit much. So I went back and I checked the system again, and what I found was like, well, maybe the fitting on top of that airbag was loose, so I tightened it down. Well, let's find out if I had a result from that. And I did. Looks like that solved the problem, because after sitting overnight, that's just a little under 60. Sweet. Let's check the other side. Awesome. That's within that 5 pounds. So I'm perfectly happy with this. I'm glad I can finally put this to bed. So make sure you check for leaks. Now, just for good measure, I went back with this line that passes through the frame here, and added a piece of 3/8 fuel line. I just cut a little length of it, and then I slid it down the center and slid it over the outside of this hose, put it through here, and zip tied it down. I don't think it's going anywhere, but this will prevent any kind of chafing with this plastic hose for this pass through here. Now for the finishing touch. So what happens if you're not near an air pump and I'm not near the shop and I need to put air in the system? Well, this is the solution that I've come up with. I've had this Milwaukee inflator that I've used for tires and things like that in the past, and I'm going to give it a try right now and see if it can take it to that full 100 psi. If it can, well, all I got to do is throw this in the truck and I'm ready whenever. Let's give this old Milwaukee a shot. Let's see if I can take it all the way to 100. I can. I can go all the way to 100 on this. So let's do it. That's one side. Done. Now for me, that is a perfect solution to all of this. I didn't have to wire up a pump or put a switch in the dash or find a place to mount that pump or do any of that kind of stuff. Because like I said earlier, I'm not going to be doing this all the time. I'm just going to occasionally need it. In fact, what I think I might do is pick up another one of these Milwaukee inflators and just keep it in the truck. That way, whenever I need the air up the air springs, I can do that. Plus, if my tires ever get low, I can address that also. So for me, like I said, ideal solution. I'll link it down in the description. Now this isn't sponsored, but some of you might have seen the goo on my drill bits as I was drilling and wondered what it was. And that's this compound that helps. I like to lubricate my drill bits whenever I'm cutting into metal. This stuff is specifically made for that. This was sent to me recently along with these TTP hard drill bits. This is my first time using them and they work pretty well. I'll link everything down in the description for you. This is pretty cool. I really like how this turned out. I really like this system. It's probably be my favorite upgrade to the truck next to the rear stabilizer bar. The rear stabilizer bar, I got a lot of bang for my buck out of that. I'm hoping I do with this as well. I plan to make a separate video about my next towing experience with this system in place. When that video becomes available, I'll link it down in the description. But for now, you've got a pretty good overview about how to install this system on your truck, or actually any vehicle. This is a universal kit. Just make sure you get the right size. Follow the instructions. There are some specific instructions for specific vehicles within it, so be sure to check those for your application. Anyway, post links in the description to parts, tools, anything that you saw in this video. If you have automotive questions, I ask that you head to EricTheCarGuy.com, which I will also link in the description. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you had as much fun as I did installing this. This was really cool. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty, and I'll see you next time.